Look at this story coming from the presidency, where we have reports that President Bola Tinubu reiterated his commitment to still using advanced technology to enhance transparency, efficiency, and foster strategic partnerships for Nigeria's sustainable development. Speaking at the 54th Annual Accountants Conference in Abuja, he emphasized his administration's focus on institutional strengthening and a culture of accountability. Represented by Budget and Economic Planning Minister Atiku Bagudu Abubakar, Tinubu outlined key reforms to digitalizing revenue, consumer credit, and agriculture, aimed at stabilizing the economy and promoting inclusive growth. He also acknowledged the critical role of accountants in ensuring transparency and resource management in governance. But going over to the overall statement about the president vowing to leverage technology for development, that's looking at the various sectors that we have now and using advanced technology. Great man, I would like to get your thoughts on this statement.
I would likely say maybe this is a miracle. Perhaps they are getting to hear us as we speak. Because I know that some time ago, not too long ago, in your program, we talked about the use of technology to curb and stall corruption, especially in financial processes. I don't know if you remember us talking about that, but I think that is something that is laudable. If the presidency has spoken in this light, saying that they are going to ensure that they leverage technology to stall corruption and all of these malpractices in financial processes and, of course, in the government processes, that is a laudable one. We celebrate that. But like I said, and like I would always say, these pronouncements should not be mere pronouncements. If you want to ensure that government processes are taken into the digital space, where everything is seamless, traceable, and transparent to a large extent, then you have the modalities right behind you. Because a lot of startups, a lot of indigenous companies have come up with programs and projects and all that can be used to digitalize and computerize processes. Look at the one we celebrated the other day in the immigration sector for passports procurement. It is very, very much within our reach. We have young people who are thinking, young people who have channeled their energy and their creative and innovative abilities to the process of digitalizing government processes. Some of them have even gone to the extent of pitching these ideas to the government parastatals, who at certain point have been able to get the audience of the parastatals, but we're turned back. So if the president has issued this very important statement today, then I think it's something we should run with. It is something that there should be no bureaucratic bottleneck that will stop these processes, because that is one big issue.
Yes, talking about that, this is
something has to pass from one place to the other.
Talking about that, I was going to ask you that, but looking at this statement made by the president, this is not the first time the president is talking about using advanced technology to enhance development. We have had stories like this on this particular show. I'm not going to ask you how viable it is, because at this time that we are, in the century that we are, it's supposed to be viable. But since you already mentioned some bottlenecks, let's look at some of these bottlenecks that we should actually address if we want this to be possible and successful.
One of the bottlenecks is we have to appeal to those who are in charge, ensure that this has a smooth sail. Don't stall this process. That is the first bottleneck we have to look at, and I call it the bureaucratic bottleneck. Because if you look at the issue of, for instance, let's borrow a name. If you look at the issue of electricity in the country, you have claims that we are producing and supplying electricity to some neighboring countries that have celebrated decades of no break in transmission of electricity. Decades. Meanwhile, the source of supply cannot boast of that. Do you know why? It is because a lot of people who could have allowed this to be a seamless process beneficial to the Nigerian populace own a lot of businesses that has to do with importing and sales of generating sets, electricity generating sets that runs into thousands and thousands and millions of dollars. When they know that these markets that they have thrived in for decades will soon come to a close, if they suddenly agree to do the right thing, then everybody begins to fight the implementation of such policy. It is one thing for the presidency to make such statement. It is another thing for political gladiators and stakeholders to begin to call in and say, Mr. President, that decision you have reached out will not favor also. Before you know it, it's stalled. It is always the decisions that do not favor the high and mighty and stalled. Every decision that goes against the masses and favors the high and mighty has a very smooth run, very smooth one. That is what we obviously see in the country most of the time. So sometimes you don't even blame Mr. President, but at the end of the day, because the whole part of mature leadership is taking responsibility, we end up blaming Mr. President. Ensure that he stands on his decision and not get influenced by any form of calls and all of those friendliness that may come in. So Mr. President must understand that beyond friends, beyond people, he is ruling a nation. And the nation looks forward to positive and impactful policies from him that will move this nation forward.
Aside,
so
yes, go on.
I'm going to come up.
Okay, but aside the people who are in charge, standing in the way and all of those things you've mentioned, there are other challenges. Because when you look at sometimes the civil service, sometimes you look at some of these ministries, you see the practices, sometimes you find out that it's very difficult for you to even carry out some processes there. You have to wait for days. Sometimes they'll tell you, oh, the system is not working, or there's no network, and some cases and issues like that. And you start wondering why we have not advanced, or we have not gone past this stage in some of these ministries and some of these parastatals. But then, does it mean that it is just the people standing in the way, or the leaders that are actually not doing what they're supposed to do in that regard? We've also had other challenges. What about the challenges of the people not being able to operate these things, probably because of the age, the set of the people who are in charge or who are working in some of these civil service organizations?
Exactly my point. That's why when I mentioned people. I started by saying people, not just leadership, yes. But not just those who are the leaders in leadership, but even those people who are friends to leadership or who are benefiting from the process. When you talk about not having light, for instance, in a parastatal as big as the secretariat, for instance, you go to a federal secretariat or a state secretariat and you do not have light, or you go to a secretariat and different ministries are operating, generating sets differently. And you go to the secretariat and you see an array of generators, not here and there. Meanwhile, you can have a particular generating set that powers the entire structure. So, who are the people in charge of this? People. At the end of the day, people stand in the way. Somebody is supposed to ensure that the entire structure has a power generating system that caters for the whole structure. But somebody is going to stall that process. So it goes back to people. Somebody is in charge of ensuring that the equipment are up to date and standard. Somebody will stand in the way. Some people go the extra mile of looting these places, carrying these things, cutting away with government properties. Who is responsible for that? People. So at the end of the day, when I mention people, it's not just about the government officials and the leaders. It goes beyond government officials and leaders. It also talks about designated heads of ministries who are put in this capacity to handle, and they also fall in that place of civil servant structure. Now, number two is training. Training. You can agree with me that so much of money can be budgeted for training on a yearly basis and never utilized. Nobody goes for training. I mean, people are the problem. Some people, it remains as fact. You know, there's a music that we sing. They say, "Na person they do person, na person do person." So people are the ones doing people in this country, and it is very sad because at the end of the day, you will not be there for long. Power is transient. You go, you come, you go. When you go, what legacies do you leave behind? But it's so absurd that people no longer think about legacies anymore. They just want to serve themselves and go away.
So corruption needs to first be addressed before we start looking at advancing technology or using technology in some of these places.
If corruption is addressed, you will be surprised to understand that, and what I'm telling you is the fact, that the provisions for technology has even been made. You'll be surprised that most of these ministries apply for computers every year. You'll be surprised to hear that. When you begin to look at budgetary allocations, you'll be surprised to hear that these ministries have budgetary allocations for computer systems, for internet, for all of these things, but somebody is sitting on it. Somebody who has said, after all, who are the people who are going to use it? Nobody is going to use it. Nobody is even going to ask questions. By the way, we're even using an analog process, paper process. And then somebody who is supposed to go for training, somebody who is in charge of training and retraining in the ministry, applies for budgetary allocations for trainings and will never execute the training. That is the problem. So when you realize that some problems are housing other problems.
Even employment, we could employ more young people into some of these places, because we have these young people unemployed, and yet we have spaces in the civil service.
Even if you employ young people today, they are still going to fall same corrupt proceedings. I'm telling you what the fact is.
Pastor Badom, your explanation is looking like we have gone to a part where there's no going back, or there's no way out. What is the way out?
It's quite, my explanation is quite experiential. Most of the times I go to these ministries to go and submit letters, to go and do this, to go and do this and that. The lift is not working. The lift is not working. But once commissioner has to come, the lift will work.
What is going on?
So, you meant to tell me that it's not people who were there before commissioner came to the office. People were there before commissioner came to the office. Why did the lift not work when others were going on?
So it's possible that even the commissioner might not be aware of some of these things going on, right?
In the moment the commissioner drives into the parking lot, the lift comes on. So commissioner walks into the office seamlessly without any hassles. So you may never come to terms with the fact that the lift is not working. But when the commissioner comes and sees that the lift is not working, then the lift is truly not working. By the time he climbs 7-story building, going up and coming down, then he will make efforts to ensure that the lift is working. But when the commissioner comes and the lift is working, then obviously, what are you going to say about that?
Okay, Badom, let me ask you a question. Why do you think all of these corrupt practices have thrived for as long as it has in the civil service?
Because people are enjoying it.
What do you mean people are enjoying it?
People are enjoying the corrupt
you just talked about climbing a 7-story building via the stairs. What is enjoyable?
When you are crying, somebody is smiling. When you are crying, somebody is smiling. Let me just say, I want to be realistic with you. People are the problem. When you are able to change people, transform them through orientation, so many things will change in this country. It's not about that means we need technology. Why don't we do this? If you are able to change people, people know the right things to do, but do not do it. People are the problem. While everybody is struggling to climb the 7-story staircase, somebody is cashing out. So at the expense of others, somebody is rejoicing.
But we have more people. We have more people who are on the other side. When you say at the expense of others, we have more people on that side than this other side. Don't you think it's a case of not, you know, enduring these problems? And that's why when we see some people come out to protest, you hear people saying, oh, we have been there, your protest is not going to yield anything. Are we really speaking up against the things that we do not want and we do not like?
My dear presenter, let me tell you something.
My dear guest, talk to me.
The bad roads that kill people, the same bad roads your politicians passed when they are going to the village. Let's look at the East-West Road, for instance, that goes through Element Junction through the Ogoni region, down and connect to Akwa Ibom. It's a federal problem. When politicians are going for political campaign and all these their processes, they go through that same road. They use escorts. They move through the road. In fact, while you are in that traffic, some police officers will come down, clear you to one corner, and the VIP is going to pass smoothly. And once they pass and they go, the traffic continues. More people are on the road suffering. A few select just pass seamlessly. People keep thriving on the sufferings of others. Do you know why many things are not going to get corrected in Nigeria? Because people are enjoying on it. People are thriving. That is their industry. That is their industry. Somebody is going to keep cashing out from this whole fuel issue. So when you are trying to protest, it will end up with years. If only people, that's why the time the people have to make their choices, I cry for the foolishness of the people, because the same people who are crying today will end up voting the same thieves into offices. The same people you know have been there are not listening to you. They will come and give you a few pennies, and then you will still go and post them tomorrow morning.
You know, when we talk about people being the problem, we're not just looking at the leaders now, because when we look at the previous election, yes, the recently conducted election in other states, I don't want to just mention any particular state, but the places where we had some violence, some sort of violence, it's still young people. And I was telling someone when I saw one of the videos that the person that's the candidate now, is not here. He's probably somewhere making calls and asking what's going on. And then these boys who are perpetrating these violent activities and, you know, actions are one of the people. So when we look at the people being the problem, we're not just looking at the people that we elect, or who are the people you elect. You know, when it's time to elect, you choose your leaders correctly and all of that. We still look at this, the people who are being ruled. We look at the society. We look at the boys who are taking cheap amounts of money to perpetrate evil and carry out harm on their fellow Nigerians. So even if we talk about orientation on the side of our leaders, you know, choose your leaders right and all that, where do we even start with the people now?
Nigerian issue boils down to two major things. Orientation. I tell you, you cannot stop orientation. Whether they think it's a long process, it's a long walk to freedom. No problem. Take the long walk. Begin first. The biggest issues of Nigeria attributed to orientation and strict. Look, let me just say three things: orientation, strict implementation, and harsh measures for punishment.
Where do we start our orientation
if you are able
from?
To get this, you are able to get this three things right, Nigeria will work.
Where do we start our orientation from? Where do we start it from?
Before you elect a leader, let the people go through a series of orientation. The media has a role to play. Social media has a role to play. Religious bodies have a role to play. Schools have a role to play. Everybody should wake up to the news of reorientation and orientation. When everybody wakes something, they are sending a message. Everywhere you go to the church, they are sending a message. You go to the school, they are sending a message. You go to the mosque, they are sending a message. You go to radio houses, they are sending a message. You tune into your TV stations and all, they are getting a message. When this Ukraine war started, let me tell you the power of orientation. When this Ukraine war started, people were fighting in support of Ukraine. Let me tell you what they began to do. They began to put subtle messages on every platform. When you are watching a Premier League match, you see a message on the screen talking about Ukraine. Condemn the war in Ukraine. Premier League match. Match at that time, nothing. Premier League match, you see a message here. You are watching a Champions League match, you see a message on the screen. You are watching CNN, you see a message on the screen. You are watching, they are sending you a message. It mustn't be that you dedicate a TV program per day or per week to orientation. No. Why that is important? Every single time we go on air, there is a message out there. Once people get to listen to you, once they get to watch your channel, they are seeing a subtle message. There's something about the mind. The mind is a tool. The mind is a tool that we have at our disposal that functions with the information we supply. When you keep supplying that information, the mind keeps getting that information. It's going to begin to readjust and realign. When people keep seeing the information, then they know this is what we are working for. Then when the election comes, don't wait till election to begin to educate people of electoral processes. Start doing it long before that time. Right. When the election comes, our leaders should be put through a proper debating system. A leader that misses the debate is not ready to rule us. The people should be made to know that a leader that feels too big to come for a debate, to tell us what he can do and what he will do, is not ready to lead us. When they have gone through a debate, our leaders should go through the electoral umpire should create a training process for leaders. There should be a training policy. Every leader that must come to the election pool must have gone through the same way you are able to stress young people to go through training processes before they can apply for jobs, before they can apply for this. Stress the leaders that want to lead us. They should go through a strenuous process of selection. Very strenuous, not just election. You don't just go through election. Shouldn't be just you going through election. You must go through a strenuous process, a very strenuous one. You must go through trainings, you must go through workshops, you must all of these things that people are ready to rule the country. And I said orientation is the key. Strict implementation of policies. Implement these policies strictly. Don't make one man bigger than the law. Once one man can flaunt the law, everybody will flaunt the law. That's the truth.
Okay.
Everybody will flaunt the law.